Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, and today we're here to have a little bit of fun. Fun for me anyway. And we are going to be talking a little bit about my least favorite fitness advice. So I'm going to be sharing with you, I've got a list here of a few of the pieces of advice that you see all the time, kind of thrown around on the internet. Some of these have been around for a long time. Some of them maybe are a little bit newer. But some of the things that are my least favorite quotes and pieces of, I guess, motivational advice and things like that to share. So without further ado, let's dive in. The first one that is on my list, this probably isn't the worst offender that we're going to talk about today, but this one is never miss a Monday. And there's, definitely I would say in some kind of fitness groups, fitness programs, some even of like the supplement kind of companies, supplement fitness sort of MLM type companies and things like that. There's sort of this like culture and this trope that you hear a lot of like never miss a Monday. And like Monday is just this super important day of the week for sort of defining and setting the tone for everything that week has to offer and how the rest of the week is going to go. And I really don't think that this is a necessary stance to take. Again, I mean, if you always tend to exercise on Mondays and Monday isn't a planned rest day for you, and like you just usually get a workout in on Mondays, then that's totally fine. I mean, I certainly do. Like I tend to take my rest days on Sundays, and so Monday is going to be a training day for me. But if it makes sense for you to have Monday as a rest day due to scheduling. Maybe you do your long run on Sunday, and so you'd rather have Monday off and then have, maybe just an easy run or maybe a workout, a speed session or something on the Tuesday. Doesn't matter. But what I want you to understand is that no single day of the week can or should have any power over any other single day of the week. It's okay to be flexible. In fact, we need to be flexible as runners if we are going to do this in a sustainable way. If we don't have any flexibility with our schedule, flexibility with being able to adapt to unexpected things that come up, being able to take an unplanned rest day sometimes if we need it, to be able to navigate changes in our schedule, social obligations, holidays, whatever it might be. If that's something that you really, really struggle with doing, then this idea of never missing a Monday is probably going to cause you more harm in the long run than good, because it's not about dedication, right? It's not about consistency with training, because we can do that without always training on Mondays. But when we have this idea that if Monday is missed, if Monday doesn't go well, if Monday isn't this like perfect, spectacular day, we get a great workout in, maybe we do a double workout to sort of try and compensate for missing the week before, or maybe we're trying to use that as a way to like work off extra calories you might have eaten over the weekend, or just, something like that. Like when there's sort of this underlying deeper reason why we're putting so much emphasis on Monday and the start of the week, and this whole idea of this like fresh start and that kind of thing, I think it can really actually cause us to go off track more easily, because it's sort of like, well, if my Monday doesn't go well, then screw the rest of the week, right? If my eating isn't perfect on Monday, or if I miss my workout on Monday, if I get a bad sleep on Sunday night and I end up sleeping in on Monday morning and I don't get more credit, like if anything happens that makes Monday not perfect, then it's like, oh, well, I've screwed up. And now I feel like the whole week is a wash, where it's so not true, right? And if you have always kind of been in that mindset and had a lot of pressure on yourself to never miss a Monday, then me saying this out loud, you might be thinking like, oh yeah, right? Like that is kind of silly. But when we are so used to just throwing around these quotes and just sort of internalizing these messages, I think sometimes it does end up being, can become a bigger issue in regard to our overall relationship with exercise and of course with eating that kind of goes along with it. So I think that it is completely fine to miss a Monday if it's, something that makes sense for you because of your overall training schedule. It's okay to plan to take Monday as a rest day and not exercise on Mondays. It's also okay if you typically do exercise on Mondays to sometimes miss a Monday, just the same way it's okay to miss a session any other day of the week. No single day of the week can or should define our overall success with our training, our overall dedication to our training, or anything like that. It's all about being flexible, of course, planning and organizing ourselves for the week ahead so we can get in all of the training that we need to in order to be successful, but it doesn't have to always happen on a Monday. So don't worry about missing Mondays or planning to miss a Monday. There is nothing special or unique about Mondays. And just, it's the same kind of idea that we sometimes have around eating, where if we have an unplanned snack, a bigger portion, more food than what we thought, we went over our calories for the day or something like that, we can sort of let the floodgate sort of open and we're like, oh, I already screwed up. So just, let's go big or go home. Right. And now we're going to just like really go off the rails with our eating because we made that one maybe misstep or did that one thing that we didn't want to do that day. And I really want to, discourage us from kind of thinking that way and having that mindset around food as well. In that, if we are feeling so deprived and restricted, that having a second helping or eating something that we didn't think we should eat or something like that really does psychologically cause us to feel out of control around food. That's something we definitely want to address and definitely want to dig into a little bit more and kind of unpack a little bit more, because that can be a huge sign that our relationship with food is struggling. And again, we should and need flexibility with our eating and with our diet. And if we're restricting to the point that we're going hungry and then finding that we end up overeating very easily as soon as, again, that kind of, the floodgates open, it becomes a very slippery slope, then I would highly, highly encourage you to, really reflect on that and reach out for some help with figuring out, again, an ideal nutrition plan for you, but then also how to improve that relationship that you might have with food that maybe is in a little bit of a bad spot. So that's number one, never missing a Monday. I think it's silly and, not something we need to be following. The second piece of advice that I have a lot of problems with, a lot of issues with, is the concept of eating less and moving more for runners who want to lose weight. The main thing, I mean, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. We've done lots of episodes on weight loss, on body composition, on balancing our fueling and our training, on the importance of adequate nutrition, adequate fueling for whatever your training demands might be, whether you're base building, getting ready for your first 5K, running a marathon, running an ultra, whatever it might be, right? We need to fuel appropriately for whatever our training demands happen to be. And it's going to look different for everyone, quite different for, say, someone just building up their mileage to complete their first 5K up to someone who's maybe going to be competing in an ultra marathon. But all that to say, if you are a runner and you are already trying to function in a very large calorie deficit, right? You're running a lot and not eating very much, just trying to increase that gap by increasing your mileage and decreasing your food intake, is only going to cause you more pain and suffering in the long run. We're talking more injuries. We're talking worsening of body composition, right? We're going to see more loss of lean muscle mass. We're going to see a easier time storing and increasing body fat percentage, of course, more challenging, difficult relationship with food and exercise, as well as things like GI issues, sleep disruptions, poor performance, mental health struggles. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Reproduction, you name it, being in an extreme calorie deficit, which we also call problematic low energy availability, right? The calories we're taking in are not enough to support optimal fueling of both our exercise demands as well as our body's basic functioning. Then this is where this concept of eating less and moving more is just so damaging for an athletic population. Are there people out there who are, at this current point in time, quite sedentary, right? They're not currently exercising, and maybe they are consuming more calories than what their bodies actually need in a day. In which case, yeah, you know what? A little bit of a calorie deficit, a little bit more exercise, a little bit of eating less and moving more isn't going to be the worst advice that someone in that situation could take in. But for people who are already very active and, very diet minded and diet focused, this concept of eating less and moving more really is just going to do more damage than good. Instead, we need to look at what is happening with our fueling strategy. Is there a timing issue? Is there a macronutrient distribution issue? Do we need to actually increase calories so we can support better performance and better results and better changes in body composition rather than just trying to starve ourselves to get the weight down on the scale? So eat less, move more is definitely a terrible piece of advice that I very much dislike for runners. And if this is something that where you are kind of feeling stuck, and this is the first episode of this podcast that you're listening to, of course, hello and welcome. I'm super glad you're here. But you'll find that it's a common theme that we talk about. We've got lots and lots of back episodes that unpack this in a lot more detail than we're covering today. All right. So my third piece of advice here that I take a lot of issue with is about protein requirements for everybody. But I see this a lot, of course, in the fitness space and especially in weight loss and body composition conversations. People will tell you that you need to eat your body weight in protein in grams per pound per day. And so you maybe have heard or seen out here on the wonderful internet that you need to be consuming at least a gram of protein for every pound of your body weight. And there's a couple problems with this. The first one is that our protein requirements, the amount of protein that we need, from how we calculate this number, it's in grams per kilogram of your body weight, not grams per pound. And I think that this is just a little bit of a miscommunication, just a mismatch between people who are living in the US and people who are living outside of the US in regard to they see nutrition advice and how they kind of interpret it and then maybe share that message like a game of telephone, right? Just the more people it goes through, the more kind of skewed it can get. And so there are 2.2 pounds in 1 kilogram. So a kilogram is a lot bigger than a pound, meaning that if we're doing that mathematical calculation for kilograms versus pounds, we're going to get a lot smaller of a number when we're calculating by kilograms, and in most cases, a more appropriate number, honestly. So what we actually need for protein in a day is going to be, I tend to start my clients and I tend to kind of like doing about a 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. We can go higher, we could go as high as 2 grams per kilo. And of course, the research looking at performance and recovery and body composition says that this is fine to do. The thing though, it just becomes a little bit about logistics and sustainability in regard to how much protein do you reasonably want to eat, and what protein foods do you enjoy enough that you want to eat potentially these pretty large quantities of them? Or are you someone who does want to consume maybe a couple of additional protein shakes or add protein powders to some of your meals, some of your foods in order to hit this higher protein goal. And this is where it's like sometimes we can give advice, but if the advice isn't reasonable or sustainable or makes sense with what that person likes to eat, wants to eat, is going to eat long term, then it's just plain bad advice. But unless someone has a very, sort of like a lower body weight, in which case we do the math and then the number for 2 grams per kilo isn't that big, that person might easily be able to hit 2 grams per kilo without a huge issue. But someone whose weight is higher, then of course that number is going to be a lot bigger, and just reasonably, does that make sense for them? So the reason that I don't always like these sort of blanket statements for pretty much anything in fitness and nutrition is because we have to look at you as an individual. What are your food preferences? What are your preferred sources of protein? Do we want to be adding in supplemental protein in the form of like protein powders and stuff like that? Or do we not? Everyone's going to have a different kind of opinion and stance on this. And that's great. That's totally fine. We just need to figure out what's going to work best for that person. So all that to say, it's important to always be looking at calculations in the correct format, using the correct units of measurement. And, if you're seeing something that you're like, oh man, for me I'd have to eat like 230 or 250 grams of protein a day. That seems crazy. Yeah, you know what? It might be, and it probably is. And so this is, of course, where I can make another plug for reaching out to someone like myself, a dietitian, to actually sit down, talk through some of these things, and figure out what's going to make sense for you. But don't worry, you do not need to eat only protein and have 3 protein shakes a day and just be stuffing yourself with protein all day long in order to have a great balanced diet and meet all your needs for all of these key nutrients that you need. All right. Number four is a huge one. No pain, no gain. And I really find this piece of advice particularly harmful and damaging for people who are struggling with slowing down on easy runs, are struggling with not racing every single workout, maybe are struggling with problematic low energy availability where they feel like every workout is a huge struggle, but that's the way it should be. And they're having a really hard time with just allowing exercise to sometimes be easy and enjoyable. Because, newsflash, at the end of the day, like exercise and moving our bodies should, for the most part, feel pretty easy and pretty enjoyable. I know that a lot of us love the feeling of working hard, and we get a deep sense of accomplishment and enjoyment and self-esteem from completing challenging workouts, right? Like you've got a workout on your calendar and it's going to be a tough one, but you just feel so strong and you feel so good and you feel so empowered being able to do that workout. And that is important. And I don't want to say that you should never feel that way and that every workout you do should feel like nothing, because there is an important sense of accomplishment, and there are very important kind of aspects to setting hard goals and doing hard things and being able to accomplish more and get more fit and get stronger. And obviously there is some level of discomfort and physical and mental challenge and overcoming those barriers and pushing through things. Sometimes, there's a time and a place for needing to dig deep, for needing to push ourselves, for needing to find that extra gear, for needing to, surprise ourselves with what we can do and how far we can go or how fast we can go. There's a time and a place for that. But if every single workout for you needs to feel that way in order for you to feel good about that workout or good about yourself as a person, as a runner, for you to feel like you're good enough, for you to feel like you're worthy of the title of runner or anything like that, then I would really, really love for you to kind of, take what I'm about to say to heart and sort of internalize this, that most of the time running should feel pretty easy and pretty enjoyable. We're talking about really slowing down on our easy runs. We're talking about staying in that aerobic conversational zone to the point where you could go running with a friend or with a group and you could have a nice conversation and catch up with someone about life and share stories and tell jokes and laugh and talk and whatever. Maybe you could sing out loud to your favorite songs on your playlist as you're out for a run. Like, when I talk about enjoying a run, that's really what I mean. It doesn't always have to feel super duper easy because there's always going to be some level of effort that goes into running, but it should be easy enough and enjoyable enough that you could do those things and get more out of your run than just again trying to run as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and then reaching a point where you're either going to plateau with your results or get injured or just not make progress in terms of getting faster or anything like that. Increasing risk of injuries, increasing risk of overtraining, all of those things that go along with just doing too much all the time. And same goes on the flip side when it comes to strength training. Coming from a background as a personal trainer, I worked with a lot of people over the years. And I, when I was in my early 20s and I was first getting into this field, it was a big part of the culture at the time. And I'll say I was 100% guilty of feeling this way personally, was that if you weren't super duper sore after every single workout, it was like you hadn't done enough, right? How sore you were after every single training session was your badge of honor, right? It was oh my God, I can barely get up the stairs. Oh my God, getting out of bed this morning. Oh my God, trying to sit on the toilet, right? Like that was how we felt we had done something worthwhile. If you didn't feel that way after every single workout, you weren't doing enough. You weren't working hard enough. And that just couldn't be further from the truth. Like that just couldn't be further from what the reality is of the concept of progressive overload and slowly increasing either the weight that we're using for any particular strength exercise, the amount of reps that we're doing for any particular exercise. These are the slow and steady things that we just build upon week after week, session after session. And it shouldn't be this huge new crazy thing that we're doing to our bodies every single time we strength train, so that we are really feeling it after every single one. So whether we're talking about running, talking about strength training, right? If your mindset, or if you think that no pain, no gain applies to these scenarios, it doesn't. There are times, like I said, when we're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable, maybe really uncomfortable, dig really deep, right? If we're aiming for a PR in a race, we're getting to, kilometer 8 of that 10K, or getting to mile 22 or 23 of that marathon, like whatever it is, at some point, yes, the racing is gonna hurt, right? There's gonna be times when it's gonna get really uncomfortable. But we have to remember that that's because we spent so much time training the right way, and training in a way that wasn't just causing unnecessary damage, unnecessary injury, unnecessary strain and stuff like that on our muscles, on our joints, etc., so that we can show up to that race at our full capacity, feeling really good, ready to give it our all. If we race every single workout, we leave it all out there in the training, then we're not going to have that much left for the actual day of the event, right? We show up to the race, we're beat up, we're exhausted, we're sore, we're injured. We're not going to have the race experience that we could. So no pain, no gain. Don't like it. You shouldn't like it either. And we want to move away from that and instead really look at enjoying all of those easy runs, making the strength training so that it complements the running that we're doing. It doesn't compete with the running and make us so sore that then we can't run for days and days after we do it. All right. And then the next one. Okay. So the next one is about strength training. The idea that strength training is going to make you bulky. Guys, listen to me. Strength training is not going to make you bulky. The people who get bulky, who grow big muscles from strength training, they work unbelievably hard, unbelievably long, and are incredibly dedicated to the process of building bigger muscles. There are whole kind of strategies around specifically targeting building more muscle and building bigger muscle mass. And the people who are, I'll say, successful with doing that, who have a goal of doing that, they work at it for years and years and years. This is not something that if you just like add into your running 2 or 3 strength training sessions per week to like support your running, we are not going to see you like coming out of the gym in 3 months looking like you belong on a bodybuilding stage. That's just not going to happen. Do some people build muscle more readily than others? Absolutely. Like if we took 100 people and we put all 100 of those people on the same strength training program, some people are going to get faster results more readily than other people, right? That just comes down to genetics and how we respond to strength training exercise. But this idea that like kind of your average everyday runner is going to add in those couple of strength training sessions per week that we're just begging you to do as running coaches, that you're going to get so bulky that now you're like no longer as good of a runner, or that it takes away from your running performance in any way, that just is not true. It just is not true. I don't care what anybody says. It's not true. If you don't like strength training and someone or you're the person or someone is kind of saying this as an excuse to just not do their strength training, it's okay if you don't like strength training. I still need you to do it. I still need you to dig deep, get uncomfortable, and find a way to fit it in. Even if we're talking 10 or 15 minutes, couple times a week, I need you to do something for building strength as a runner. I don't need you to spend hours and hours in the gym every single week. I don't need you to start treating yourself and training like a bodybuilder, but we need to do something. And don't worry, it's not going to make you bulky. And then on the flip side of that, the last piece of advice that I want to talk about today is this concept that if you are someone who's a little bit more enjoys strength training a little bit more and kind of leans towards that a bit, that cardio and doing cardio is going to cause you to lose all of your muscle mass, right? It's going to basically burn up all of your muscle and you're going to lose all of your muscle mass because you did too much cardio and that took away from your strength training. Now, if we're talking about like a long period of time, like years and years and years, and you used to do way more strength training and then you stop and now you just do cardio and you don't do any strength training, like you don't do anything to maintain the strength and muscle that you've previously built. Yeah, obviously, right? It's kind of a use it or lose it type of scenario. If you don't keep up with the things that helped you build that muscle, you are not going to maintain that muscle. And so if you stop strength training and it just totally goes out the window and instead you run, yeah, over time, you're probably going to see some loss of muscle in those parts of your bodies that you're no longer regularly working and training. But if you're keeping up with your strength training and you're fueling adequately for the additional cardio that you're doing, right? You're taking in enough calories, enough protein, enough carbs to actually fuel the additional exercise that you're doing with the running that you're adding in, then no, we would not see a loss of muscle mass just from adding in more cardio, right? But if we create a low energy availability environment, a problematic low energy availability environment, because we have not increased our nutrition and our fueling, but we've added in a bunch of running on top of the strength training that we were previously doing, and we don't adjust for that with our fueling plan, then yeah, we're going to have a problem. And one of those problems is loss of strength, reduced performance and reduced muscle strength and endurance, as well as potentially a loss of lean body mass along the way. So just to say, both, excessive, I'll say strength training, excessive cardio without adding in adequate nutrition to support those things, neither is a good scenario. But also there isn't this sort of dichotomous strength training versus cardio. You got to pick one or the other and you're kind of like in one camp or in the other. And we're all fighting at the gym, we're over here on the treadmills throwing things and you're over there in the weight room, whatever. That is not what we're talking about. Everyone really benefits from a performance perspective, from an overall health and fitness perspective, right? The reason why we do these things, long term, we want to be healthy old people one day, right? We want to be fit, we want to be strong, we want to be independent old people decades down the road. And incorporating both strength training and cardiovascular fitness exercises in our program is the best way to make sure that we're as well-rounded as we can be with our long-term health goals. So, strength and cardio, I want you to do both, but I want you to fuel for both. And I want you to make sure that you're doing both in a way that allows you to, feel really good during most of your workouts, recover completely in between most of those workouts, and, not be so sore, so run down, so exhausted, so overtrained that over time you're actually losing fitness versus gaining because you're just trying to do too much and not getting in the recovery and nutrition that you need. So that is it for today's episode. I hope that you were able to take some of these messages to heart and maybe hear a new perspective on some of these common pieces of fitness advice that maybe aren't so helpful after all. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and maybe we'll do some more for next season. We'll bring back another round, because the internet, there is absolutely no shortage of bad fitness and nutrition advice out there. All right, that is it for this week's episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today and listening and hearing what I have to say. And we'll catch you right back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.